service that I believe every American should have access to. As a first world country and largest economy in the world, access to affordable high-speed internet should not be an issue that we actually have to get together over, but we all know the reality is that we do. And I'm going to get into a little bit of a conversation and go over a couple comments before we get into the discussion. But first, I'd like to hear from, I asked two of our mayors who I've worked with a lot, in particular on the connectivity issue. And I know I've worked with many of you on this issue. So everyone will have a chance to speak today and to ask questions or raise issues. But I want to hear from a couple mayors first, and then hear a little bit from our internet service providers, and then about what they're doing to address the issue and how they're how they're handling this, and then we'll get into a conversation. If I can, we've been very lucky to have one of our mayors really chair an effort in the Sussex-Warren area, and that's Mayor Stars, who's joining us today, who a minute ago told me she didn't have enough broadband to get on, just to give you a sense of how touch and go it is for where Mayor Stars lives. So I'll start with Mayor Stars to open up. Mayor.
Yes, hi, Congressman and everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for spearheading this effort. I think all of us who have been in the area for years know that this is an ongoing and continuing problem. So the core issue, just to get down to it right away, is that we are a rural area and we don't have the population that makes it really attractive to install the technology that's needed to get people the internet that they need. But it's a real and genuine problem. I can tell you there is one road in Knowlton Township that the half of the road literally has no internet, absolutely none, zero internet at all, none to their houses. And we can't get it there. And as municipal officials, I don't know what we're doing in this day and age that, we can't make that a requirement. And we've had some response from area providers who are using CAF grants to try and give us improvements in internet, but that only works for areas that have, I think, less than 3 Mbps speeds. So that means, for example, my house, my neighborhood didn't qualify for that. So that's the speed that we have in my house right now with 4 children trying to use Zoom for remote classes. And it's just unacceptable, really. And I'm glad that we're all here, though. These are all the right people sitting in the right room so that we can all put our heads together and figure out what we can do about it.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Mayor Duffy, if I could turn to you for a minute. I know you've also been like a dog with a bone, like our mayor, all of our mayors have on this issue. Mayor? You're on mute, Mayor, sorry. There you go. Okay, there I go. All right. Yeah, I'm not sure I care for the analogy, Josh, but I think what Mayor Starr said, I think effectively, summarizes, where we are out in this part of the state. It's a good day for me if I can get 3 megs, and that's rare. And again, it's very difficult. Obviously, it's top of mind for our residents, particularly now with the pandemic. And people are home and they're going to be needing, this is going to be critical for their education at this point. And, frankly, there's not a sense of confidence here that the networks are going to hold up, because of the pressures put on by the pandemic. So, I think that's my statement, Josh. I think, Adele's done a great job of just really addressing what the core issues are.
Hey, Josh.
Sorry, I'm happy to assume the dog with a bone analogy. That's how hopefully we're going to get through this. So I'll take that on. Can I? Yes, Mayor McDonough, please.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Josh, for doing this. You've been a leader out here and trying to help us get this together, and Adele Stars and Mayor Duffy as well. But this is getting worse and worse now, obviously with the pandemic. But my wife, who happens to be a realtor, is telling me almost every day how this is impacting the home sales in this area. I was on the phone last night with our school board, and I know the school board's represented on this call, and trying to decide what we're going to do. But it kept coming up. If we do the virtual There are parts of our town, as Adele said, that we just cannot do it. So how do you do a virtual and not be able to have your kids be able to participate? In today's world, unacceptable. Impacting home businesses. I had 2 calls coincidentally yesterday from residents who are they've been told by their companies now that they will not be returning physically to their businesses, one in New York, one in Parsippany. They're working from home. They don't have the ability to do that, so now they may have to move because they don't have it in this new world. So, I mean, these are all the things you've heard, but they continue day in and day out. And to Josh's point, this is not a third world country here. We need to get this done.
Thank you, Mayor, for driving the point home, and I think especially the point about property values, adding to that point, which I think is critically important. It's very, very hard to convince somebody to move somewhere these days if they don't have connectivity. Really, really challenging. Superintendent Bellotti, do you want to? I mean, you're obviously putting programs together in school, so how are you thinking about this?
Yeah, we're planning on starting with a hybrid option, but any of our options include an element of online virtual instruction. So this is a concern of ours. This was our biggest weakness in the spring, was connectivity. And as Mayor Stars mentioned, I think she very eloquently stated, this is a problem because we have regions of our school district that literally don't have internet. And so it's been very difficult for us. We've been working with families to get them Verizon sponsored hotspots, but they only work if there's cell service available in that home. So there are some regions that don't have cell service available either. So it's really been a real equity issue for us because some of our residents have enough internet coming in where they can log on to a Zoom. We actually chose the Zoom platform specifically because it was the lowest bandwidth available, and it has the option, as one of the mayors stated, it has the option to come on only audio, which even reduces that bandwidth further. But this is really having an impact on our students and their ability to participate. We're looking at, at least the first half of the school year being partially remote. Our students need to have access to internet services in order to participate in their instruction.
Thank you, Superintendent. Mayor Miglio or Lensack or Sandy or Ed, Mayor Myers, anybody else want to jump in before just a quick opening thoughts on how it's affecting your communities? Mayor Lensack and then Victor, I guess.
Thank you very much for taking care of this, and it's good to see the other mayors in. We're kind of lucky here in Andover where we are partnering with Planet Network coming in and bringing bandwidth. But yeah, it is very important. Heard from a lot of people that working from home, and especially now since they're saying the schools might go 100% remote, I think it's very important that we have this type of service available for people. And I know the Planet Network is working hard trying to get it running, so we appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, and we'll hear from Robert in a minute. Mayor Miglio, and I know it's Mayor Phillips. I know you're also here as well. So, Mayor Victor, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay, Josh. Yeah, I mean, obviously we're very few in number out in Walpack, but for years, a lot of our residents have never even bothered with a hardline phone, a ground line phone. We just use our cell phones and try to do the best we can with a hotspot. That's both not as efficient, obviously, and also in many cases very expensive. It's just not workable for where we are right now. And I appreciate what you're doing here.
No, thank you so much, and thanks for being here to make those points. And any other mayors want to jump in before I make a couple comments? I know we're going to hear from some of our providers.
Josh, Joe Roth. I'm a councilman from Belvedere, standing in for Mayor Kennedy.
Thank you, Councilman.
And just one other point is home resale, as we're starting to see Warren County and even across the river in the Lehigh Valley, they're seeing a resurgence in the housing market because people are now realizing they can work from home, and so people are moving out of the cities, and houses are being bought up in our territories. But that's an impossible situation without internet connectivity, and so towns that don't have it are just going to continue in a downward spiral, while towns that do have it are going to win the housing prize. And that's just not acceptable at all.
Thank you, Councilman. I mean, I think you're hearing, I don't know if Pat or Ag or anyone else wants to make.
Josh, Ed Meyer from Sussex Borough. I just did want to make a comment about Optimum and Altice. I wanted to actually thank them for, they doubled their internet speed at the same cost in Sussex Borough. So at this point, people now can get up to 400 megabytes. So I do appreciate that. So that seems to have made a big difference, where before, when there was a lot of traffic, the internet would come down to a crawl. But kudos to Optimum and Altice for doing that. Now we just need some line extensions for the other mayors and the more rural Wantage Township, which circles Sussex Borough.
I appreciate that, Peg.
Yeah, we had a phone call with Altice the other day, and one of the things that they had said as part of, I guess, their agreement with BPU was that they were going to reduce the house density needed for running the line extensions. But again, it went from, like, I don't know, 30, I can't remember now if it's 35 or 38 down to like 25 or 28, and out this way, that still doesn't work. While I, appreciate the effort that was done there, it's still going to make it an expensive situation for anyone who has to try to run the cable. And to echo on to the housing market, unlike many of the communities that are on the Zoom call with us, Green's in pretty decent shape, but we definitely have some holes. And the homes that are in those holes, one person actually just purchased a house and did not realize that the internet connectivity was like non-existent, and is having to do it through the phone company. And at best, with all the best equipment in the house and so forth, if they can get 3 megabits, that's it. And that doesn't work in today's world.
I think your point that you just made is exactly the right one. We'll get to some of our carriers here in a minute, who I can talk about some of the best ways to address this. But I think the points you've all made are exactly the challenge, just completely put a fine point on the challenge we're facing and have been facing. I feel like we've all been talking about this. We have a very similar conversation year in and year out, which just adds to the incredible frustration that not just the mayors and councils and other officials here have, but more importantly, that all the residents have and all the businesses have. And the good news is for our communities is that more people are moving in and the numbers are going up. The challenging news is, we're more dependent now than ever on broadband, on the internet, and we're not equipped. And you're right that Altice agreed to double their speeds, but there's too many places that have no connection whatsoever and remain with no connection. And as you know, the cost of actually wiring these communities is very, very expensive. And right now we're in a crisis, a health and an economic crisis. And the broadband issue is just, in my opinion, exacerbating it. I mean, the fact is, it's very difficult to run a 21st century economy, in my opinion, if you have basically 19th century equipment. If you have landline phones with slow DSL and you're getting 3 down and 1 up, that's as I've said before, if you have Netflix, which will get you through, might be good to help show your kids something to get through being inside for weeks on end. It takes, where I live, an hour away from where you are, it takes 30 seconds to download an episode of a 30-minute show, and it takes you 30 minutes to download the same episode, right? I mean, so then add that to business and everything else you're going to do, and it's a huge, huge problem. And it's no longer it's not just an entertainment issue. Now it's more than ever a huge economic issue, and with on the healthcare side, and we know how it's a distance learning. It's a healthcare issue because we know so much medicine is now occurring and service this way. And as you pointed out, and as the superintendent pointed out, it's really a learning issue, and that could lead to huge gaps in access to education, equal access to education. Microsoft last year did a survey that said 162 million people across the U.S. are not using the internet at broadband speeds, meaning, I guess, Tom, what's a broadband speed? 10 down? What's the definition of broadband right now? 10 down? 10 up? 10 down? So that like what, so not achieving, so 162 million Americans are not achieving 10 down. In 2018, nearly 17 million children lived in homes without high-speed internet, and more than 7 million didn't have a computer at home, which is, by the way, a whole nother issue of having devices, right? So if we're gonna have our kids e-learning and distance learning, and right now in COVID, this is a huge reality for pretty much everyone in New Jersey, some form of distance learning, whether, every school may have different hours, but some form of distance learning. If you don't have a device and connectivity, you're really living in a whole different era, and you're being left out. In Jersey in 2019, especially in the western part of my district, students and families and businesses are basically close to a quarter of middle and working class households lacked access to the internet. In Newton, it's nearly a third. And not to mention the numbers that the mayors just talked about in their communities. In White Township, more than 35% of middle class lacks access to high-speed broadband. So basically, you have slower speeds, and it's very tough for online instruction or participate in live debate with a class. It really can, I believe, damage development. There was a publication that recently noted that I think it was the New York Times, that most students will have fallen behind in learning by the time they start this school year, just from last spring. Some kids are down almost a year's worth of education because of this, and there's a lot of catch up to be done just from what happened by us all facing the pandemic in March, and we're very worried about what happens frankly, what's going to happen in the months ahead. Researchers said high school dropout rates are increasing because of it as a result. And I'm worried that this is a trend that only continues. And as Mayor Starr said, there's literally dial-up or no broadband. The fact that there are streets with literally no internet access in northern New Jersey is insane. And when you tell people that, they don't believe you, right? They say, what do you mean there's no internet? Like slow internet? I say, no internet, none, zero, no access. Now you get to the business side of the equation, which we know now with our businesses of all sizes being able, how critical it is from business surviving to be able to go online. So you have small businesses that need to go online, and then you of course so many people now who need to work remotely like this, right? And if they have no connectivity, it's impossible for them to work remotely. I mean, how are they? So you got businesses who need to sell their products and their services online, and then you've got people who need to be able to work online. Of course, not everybody can work like this, but if you have no connectivity, you can't do either. And I don't know if you're a restaurant, how you get an order placed remotely. This is a big issue for farms as well. In my district, a huge impact on agriculture. Prior to the pandemic, a U.S. Chamber of Commerce report found that 66% of rural small businesses surveyed reported issues with poor broadband connectivity to their business's success. And this has only actually accelerated that significantly. Then, as I mentioned before, telehealth is now a critical lifeline to patients during the pandemic, especially in our more rural areas. Virtual visits via phone or video obviously can help doctors treat patients with non-urgent medical cases or routine management of medical health, diabetes, heart disease, and many other medical conditions. It's really now the way more and more people are getting medicine, especially if they can't go in, if they can't go into the hospital, if they can't get there, if they can't get to a doctor. 1 in 4 adults have used telehealth during COVID. 1 in 4 to continue their medical care remotely. It's a critical lifeline to preserve hospital space for those who do test positive, but also those who just can't travel during the pandemic. And we're seeing the benefits of remote health and telehealth, especially for seniors and others, how much easier it is. But if you have no connectivity, again, it's impossible. Now, 2 good pieces of news. The Bipartisan CARES Act, which I was proud to help pass out of the House in March, included hundreds of millions of dollars in investment to increase broadband infrastructure and internet-connected devices to support telehealth and telework and telelearning. These resources went to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Rural Utility Services, called RUS, their Reconnect pilot program, to support investment in rural areas, and that's a thing that we all should be looking into, all of our mayors here. And that distance learning, it's to help distance learning telemedicine and broadband program to invest in rural communities for access to all the things we've talked about. The CARES Act also invested in the FCC COVID-19 telehealth program to expand services and capacity for rural hospitals to help support distance education and for telehealth and enhance bandwidth and support for veterans. On top of that, here locally, the CARES Act got $1.7 million investment to Sioux Falls Health Center, which is locations in Newton and Hackettstown, to support their ongoing work in telehealth and community care. The CARES Act also sent $40 million investment to higher education institutions in the 5th District to help support schools and help students pay for basic essentials. In Sussex and Warren, this was sent to Sussex County Community College, Warren County Community College, and Centenary University. For the 5th District's elementary and secondary schools, we've received $7 million in CARES investment to help schools provide quality education through remote learning. But again, these things all help our schools, but don't solve the at-home problem. So it solves part of the equation, but not the other part of the equation, which I know is very frustrating. In the HEROES Act, which we passed out of the House, we actually put a bunch of resources in, $1.5 billion to close the homework gap by providing Wi-Fi hotspots and connected devices for students, and more resources for emergency home connectivity. So more direct dollars that's sitting in the Senate waiting for action. And there was also more resources for the rural health program. And last month, the House passed legislation that actually I sponsored and I wrote to increase in broadband investment in broadband infrastructure to help address the challenges facing unserved and underserved areas like our area. And it increases investment in FCC broadband infrastructure grant program and it tries to really help our communities. So now the key is actually getting some of this stuff done. And there's the short-term issues to help our schools and get Wi-Fi hotspots and get more resources to our rural areas. And then there's the long-term issues, which we talked about today, which really need to get emergency educational connection to not just on the short-term side of the libraries, but to actually to our communities like yours, long-term fixes. I helped lead legislation on called the Bipartisan Rural Broadband Acceleration Act to get the FCC to invest in shovel-ready high-speed internet projects so consumers can get access to broadband within a year. So actually really accelerate it. These are the areas we've talked about. It would help, Robert Boyle actually wire some of these areas and help hopefully Verizon and Altice and others actually lay some more cable and help support and pay for more of the connectivity and through the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. Because to me, we've got to figure this out. If it's too expensive for our carriers to do it, the bottom line is we have to figure out a way for it to get done. We're going to keep working on this. There's infrastructure packages that bill called HR2, which was a massive infrastructure package, which included rural broadband infrastructure, but it's a bipartisan issue. Rural broadband is one of those things that Democrats and Republicans both agree on, that can get done and has to get done. And frankly, if we have to keep having conversations like this year in after year in, year out, I mean, it's beyond frustrating. I can't imagine how frustrating it is for you and for your constituents. I'll keep fighting for it. Obviously, this is something we've all been fighting for together. But I think now, especially this crisis that we're living through right now, has really driven home the point, I think more than anything, of the need, the immediate and urgent need. So with that, if I can, before we get to questions, I'd love to hear from a couple of our providers. It looks like we've got Marilyn on from Altice. I see you joined, Marilyn. How are you? And I know we've got Tom Edwards on from Verizon and Robert Boyle, who's Planet Networks, and Josh Moser from CenturyLink. So is it okay, mayors, if we hear from our providers for a minute? Okay.
Great. Yep. Yes.
So now that we've laid out the problem, we've laid out some of the solutions. Marilyn, you have your Peloton behind you, which means you had a good workout today. Why don't we start with you?
Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Congressman, for the invitation to join you this morning. Bill Palatucci and I have had several conversations with many of the local mayors. One, to introduce myself to the community, as I will be your point of contact for Altice USA. The company is very excited to be in the formerly Service Electric footprint and to enter the market. We're aggressively working to integrate the two companies, as well as to align the networks. Some of your constituents may have seen that we have one of our first commitments is to increase the broadband speed. Is now at 400 megabytes, so people may already have access to the higher speed there. And again, those who are on lower tiers, like I think if they were at a 20 megabytes per second, we've aligned those with our products at no additional charge to the consumers. We're also looking forward to bringing in what we call fiber to the home, to the community, which is our fiber optic network. Currently, we have a hybrid system that's both coax and fiber. We're going to make it 100% fiber, so that will be coming into the market soon as well. Some of the programs I think we've discussed before, but I'll just share again, that we're going to bring into the community, especially as we get ready for the school year. One of our programs is called Lte Advantage, which is a low-cost broadband program for families with children on free or reduced lunch. We're also, that program also is applicable to seniors and veterans. Again, it's one of those programs where you have to qualify for, but it is a program that's available for low-income individuals, and we're excited to bring that into the marketplace, especially as we get ready for this upcoming school year.
Marilyn, what do you think we do about for the people who, we were talking about from e-learning and work and those who aren't connected? How do you see the future? What do we do going down the road here? I mean, are we just stuck because it's too expensive to wire these areas? Do we try to get some of this legislation passed to help pay for more of it? What's the answer?
So LTC is part of a national movement to try to get funding similar to LIHEAP, if you will, for those individuals who can't afford broadband at all. So we're actively engaged in that process on the federal level.
I mean, I'm just talking about if there's no connect. The concern is, with a lot of our mayors, is there's literally no connection to the home. We can't forget even affording it, and the speed side of it is just there's zero connection. Period. So if you've got a kid at home who's got to learn, and as Superintendent Bellotti was telling us before, and there's no way to actually get connected, what do you think we do about that? And and I can also ask the others about this.
I'm sure we can address that on a case-by-case basis. We haven't, LT's pre-SECO is primarily in the more densely populated areas, so that hasn't been an issue for us to date. However, if that is an issue in the SECO footprint, we can certainly have one-on-one conversations, see how we can address. Perhaps we can get some hot spots for the students. What we did during in the spring when the pandemic first occurred, we did provide for schools who had school issued devices. We did have a program set up for those students to have access to the Wi-Fi networks. But certainly, if those issues exist in the SECO footprint, we can have conversations and see what kind of solutions we can provide for those students.
Got it. Thank you. Josh? Mozart, Josh? There you go.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. When you said Josh, I was, every time you said Josh, it was you at first.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. It's obviously good to see you all again. Obviously, Mayor Duffy, Mayor Stars, Mayor McDonough, all met, I think, early on back in 2017 with some of my predecessors here at the company. And then meeting again throughout that, the CAF deployments. I know Mayor Stars, you mentioned what was done already. Happy to report, obviously, about 1,700 living units added through that CAF program. There's a couple hundred more that still remain to complete that. I was a part of that program now going on 6 years ago, and I remember thinking, wow, this is going to be a while. It's going to be 6 years. Well, that 6 years is now about up with the CAF2 program. And certainly the next phase of that, as you're well familiar with, Congressman, is RDOF. Obviously, the quiet period that we're in right now would prohibit us from talking specifically about anything about RDOF. But certainly you asked what would help moving forward. And certainly that type of funding would help offset the cost to build to some of these most remote areas. But certainly that still leaves a gap in time. When you think of the areas that we serve in the northwest part of New Jersey. We've got about 26 exchanges. Most, I think, are represented here. I think we've done a good job to this point in working with the mayors in deploying what was identified within CAF. There's some some additional upgrade projects that were pending prior to the pandemic. Certainly, everything was delayed as impacted by the pandemic, especially as we had to monitor our entire fiber backbone across the United States and into 60 other countries. But I'm happy to report that obviously that network, the backbone network that CenturyLink provides, is performing well, and we're confident in its continued performance. So I'd say that the ongoing, the immediate need for CenturyLink would be to finish the upgrade projects we've identified, and then obviously both monitor what's going on with RDOF, and then we've seen in other states that those CARES Act dollars have been applied. Depending upon what each state does with those, certainly there's an opportunity there for broadband. And then, as Marilyn mentioned, certainly ongoing case-by-case conversations, especially with whether it be superintendents with schools or mayors, would give us opportunities to identify that particular road, obviously, that Mayor Stars is mentioning, versus a map that might not fully identify a gap. So, but we appreciate the conversation and the discussion, Congressman.
Thanks. Before I get to Tom, any questions from the mayors? Or anybody want to follow up with Altice or CenturyLink?
Yeah, Josh. Yeah, talking to Josh. Thank you, Josh, from CenturyLink. You talked about, there were some additional upgrades that were being contemplated, and that COVID kind of put some of those on the back burner. Would it be possible for you to share what those are with the individual mayors? You don't have to do it here, but maybe a follow-up. I'd be interested to know what additional upgrades are contemplated or could we possibly do moving forward. And I know you and Josh and I have had this conversation, and I appreciate your reaching out as you've done in the past, but I'd be interested to see what those upgrades, what possible upgrades there are.
Yeah, certainly, Mr. Mayor and Congressman. And I need to go back and double check the status of all those projects. We've obviously had some distractions here over all the global pandemic response efforts, but certainly, yes, and I can reach out to each one of you individually, and obviously I've worked with you all in the past, but thank you.
That'd be great. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you. Mayor Stars?
Yes, I just had a question for Marilyn at Altice. Josh Motzer from CenturyLink referenced an upcoming round of grant funding that would be coming down the pike. Does Altice have any plans not to increase speed to homes that already have it? That is not the need at all for us. The need is to expand to areas that don't have it. What are Altice's plans with the upcoming rounds of funding?
You're on mute, Marilyn. Sorry.
So the company hasn't discussed any grant offerings. The company has committed to reducing the household count. My understanding under C code, the household count was 35 households per mile. Our threshold pre-COVID was at 25, and we lowered the rate for C code to 25 households per mile. And again, as if there are any outliers or any residents who are outside of that 25 household count, we can have conversations about that as well.
Okay, Tim?
Yeah, I'm sorry. To Marilyn, who determines the 25 miles, the 25 houses per mile? You mentioned BPU, and that's then that conversation. Who makes that determination?
No, the company offered that to the BPU. So
Altice has the ability to lower that.
Yes.
If we so wanted, right? If because the 25 just, and I think Mayor Starr said in the beginning too, just is not, just not cutting it. And I think we need to give some serious consideration and conversation.
It leaves out a lot of homes.
Yeah, it does. Out
so
here,
Maryland, yeah, that doesn't include a single neighborhood in Knowlton Township. That does not affect a single neighborhood.
And I was just about to say the same for Hope.
I think we agreed to in the order to the mobile home park. Isn't that in Knowlton, right?
I have not received word of that. If that's the case, that would be great, but I have not received word of that.
So I think Bill Palatucci, he's reaching out to all the mayors to set the meetings. I'll circle back with him because I believe we reached out to meet with you as well, but I'll confirm, and if not, we can certainly have that conversation when we do talk, okay?
Thank you.
And Mayor McDonald, we can certainly have conversations as well if there are any outliers, but we're happy to have the conversation and see how we can,
I'm waiting for the meeting with you and my good friend Bill Palatucci. So I'm looking forward to that.
I'll nudge him today.
Okay.
So why don't we, hey, Robert, why don't you talk to us a little bit about, what do we do if we can't get connectivity, right? If Altice or CenturyLink can't get there, and then we'll get to Tom, who I know is not directly in the district. They don't have exact files, is not in the district, but can talk a little bit about the mobile side of it. Robert, can you talk a little bit about what you're up to?
Sure. Just if I can go through a couple different things. So Robert Boyle from Planet Networks. I think I know everyone on the call. I've talked to most of you on the call. Marilyn, nice to meet you. Marilyn is here today, and Optimum Altice is now in competitive pressure is basically what made that happen. So we're deploying fiber throughout their footprint, and I believe that's what made Service Electric sell, because everywhere we build, they had no customers. So that's a good thing. Now Altice is upping their game and increasing. I'm actually speaking to you over my Optimum home connection. So, and we're not going to serve everybody all the time, immediately. So I'm really happy to see that Optimum is now there and doing things, and especially the Optimum Advantage program is huge for low-income families, because that was something we've always had, but Service Electric never did. Anyway, so we are deploying fiber in as many towns as we can. Peg, you mentioned Green. My parents live in Green. I grew up in Green. I lived in Green for many years. After my parents, I moved back there afterwards, and I had a DSL connection at home. It was terrible. No offense, Josh. 20 years ago it was great technology. Today it's not, what we need. It's better than nothing, but just barely. So we 25 units per mile is not going to get the job done for anyone on this call. I know that, you guys know that. So we are deploying, we don't really care what the density is. If we're deploying an area, we're deploying the area, and we do as much as we can, as quickly as we can. The problem for us is it's an access to capital issue, because if we have, we're a small company, we're privately held and privately funded. So as we deploy an area, let's say I can borrow $1 million. $1 million makes a lot more sense in Lake Mohawk than it does in Knowlton. No offense, Mayor Stars. It's just, my payback is gonna be a lot sooner in Lake Mohawk than it is in Knowlton. In the RDUF fund that someone was talking about before, Walpack is included in that, and part of Alamucci. Other than that, there are no areas in Sussex or Warren that are included in RDUF funds. So I think there were a total of, I don't remember the exact number of units, but I think it basically covered like 140 houses or something like that. You get paid a pretty nice subsidy to build to those 140 houses, but that's not going to move the needle for anyone in any of these communities. Another thing is, the biggest problem is that the RDOF funds and all those things are meant for someplace in Kansas or in Wyoming, where you have huge counties and huge areas, and if it's available in some town, then that means that the whole town is covered. In New Jersey, if CenturyLink provides DSL on one street in part of a town, basically, or if Altice or Optimum has high-speed connectivity somewhere in the town, then the entire region is green as far as the funding is concerned, and there's no need for any additional funding because that area has service. And so that's really we need much more granular data, and that would open up the opportunity for a lot more funding in some of these areas. The 477 forms that ISP, so Altice submits those, CenturyLink submits those, we submit those. Any service provider that has facilities, if there's a wireless provider, I know, Tom, I don't know if you guys, as a cellular carrier, I don't think you submit 477s for data access, but the FCC uses that data with the USDA and with the USAC program to determine eligibility for funding for rural areas. And because that area is not granular enough, most of New Jersey is not eligible. Most of New Jersey comes up that we all have broadband available. So, and that's a problem, because a lot of these areas, it's going to cost a lot of money to build to them, and the payback is very long, 7-8 years probably in our case, for a lot of these areas. Now, Mayor Starr, I said to you that Mayor Starr's Knowlton, we could deploy all of Knowlton for about $1.2 million, but the problem is that with 1,000 people, that's going to take a long time to pay that back. And it's going to cost me about $1 million to get to Knowlton. So, and these aren't like top secret numbers that nobody can figure out. I mean, Josh and Marilyn, your internal engineering people can tell you these numbers. It's X number of dollars a mile to deploy. I have to say CenturyLink has been really, for the most part, very good to work with, getting access to the poles. And, although they're a competitor, they've been working with us and being as accommodating as possible, not just doing what the law requires, but doing the right thing to help us deploy broadband. And we really appreciate that. And want to say thank you to you, Josh, and to CenturyLink for, doing the ethical thing. And although we're competitors, helping us to deploy broadband in as quickly as we can. So that's been really helpful. So access to the poles is one issue. Engineering costs is another. And the actual cost of the fiber is very, very low. I mean, fiber is dirt cheap. We actually pay less for fiber than we do for the steel cable that it sits on. So deploying fiber to remote neighborhoods is not difficult. It's just, an access to capital issue. And if that was solved within a couple of years, we'd have all of your towns completely done. So, and in those areas, if you have areas where you don't have fiber or you don't have any access at all on those streets, if you can let me know what those streets are, we can see what we can do and we can potentially work with them. We actually, we use Altice actually in some areas for fiber drops for areas that we serve. So we get dark fiber from Altice and then we extend network past where they are. So even if it's an area where we don't have network right now, we could potentially help you and deploy some of those areas. And I don't know, Josh, if you'd be willing to work with me to help expedite some of those things, because these kids are going back to school and don't have internet access. That's unconscionable. We need to fix that. So if there's like a couple miles here and there that we can deploy a mile of fiber a day. So we can fix that.
Yeah, and Robert, thank you for the comments, and I appreciate that. I think your underlying message is a strong one, which is there are there's a lot of activity from a lot of different players in this space, and I would say, and I appreciate that comment to say we know that we're not going to own every single customer in that space, and so if there's an opportunity to partner, Robert, I'd welcome that. So certainly let's touch base after this.
Great, and Mayor Stars, sorry.
Yes, sure. You can call me Adele. Just a question. You were mentioning that we need more granular information so that our area would be eligible for more of these federal funds. How do we go about getting that? Does a university need to be involved? How do we get that?
No, it's not anything that you need to do. The internet service providers provide it, but the information that we provide is based on what the FCC asks us to provide. So what the FCC asks us to provide, they say, where are all the places you provide service? And we give down to an address, basically, we provide. And then they say, where are the areas that have service available? And they chop off all the last 7 digits of that number. And it's basically, we provide it in Knowlton. So therefore Knowlton has service, if that makes sense. And that's the information that's used for all the grants and all the funding for CAF and for RDOF and all these other opportunity fund things. So.
Can I thank you so much, Robert. It's really helpful, and thanks for what you're doing. Tom, I know you're not necessarily directly in the area, but obviously on the cell side you are, on the mobile side you are. Can you talk a little bit about what you've been up to?
Sure. Thanks for inviting me, Josh. And none of you know me. I work on the federal affairs team in Washington, D.C. and work closely with Josh down there. I am a Jersey guy, though, grew up in South Jersey, so I know where most of your communities are. When Hans Vestberg became our CEO about 18 months ago, he looked at the rural broadband problem from across the country and concluded that was something that Verizon, as a national cell carrier, needed to find a solution to. So he has his C-suite executives working on coming up with a variety of solutions. One of the ones we're in the field experimenting with right now is we refer to it as Lte Home Internet. And we're experimenting with it in Missouri, Georgia, Tennessee. It provides 5 megabits download speed, 3 megabits upload speed, and the charge for the service is $40 a month if you're already a Verizon Wireless customer, $60 a month if you're not. just started this experiment with these states beginning in July. If it works well, we're going to deploy it elsewhere around the country. And it sounds like Warren and Sussex counties in New Jersey, which is essentially Verizon's home state, are a perfect place to do this sort of thing. The other thing we're working on the wireless side is, as you've all described, especially particularly the superintendent, the issue around distance learning across the country is absolutely essential to get it done. We've entered into some partnerships with 12 states. It was a deal that we entered into with Georgia, but then it was expanded to include 11 more states, including New Jersey. And it's for educators, and the State Department of Education is involved in it, and our New Jersey team, Superintendent Bellotti, and those of you who are involved with your local school districts. If you're interested, please let Representative Gottheimer know, and I'll get our New Jersey team to connect with you so you can get more details on it. But right now, this would be providing hotspots and wireless access to students in their homes, so they don't have to go to a local McDonald's or to the library or someplace like that in order to do their classwork. We've started rolling this out in March. It was the speed was of the essence, and we concluded, and the city of Los Angeles concluded that the fastest way to get deployment of these services to their students was going to be through a wireless devices. So we entered into partnership with them. Initially, it was reasonably successful. So now, with the total of 12 states, we can cover 12.5 million students. So those of you who are interested in more details, please let Representative Gottheimer's staff know, and I'll share that with our New Jersey team and have them get in touch with you.
Excellent, Tom. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And I think some very good opportunities there for folks. Yeah, Tim.
Yeah, just Josh, we'd be very interested in that. So, I would think most mayors on this call would be. So if we can get that information, Josh, that would be great. Thank you.
We'll get that out, Tom. If you get to me, we'll get it to everybody on both programs immediately.
Thanks.
I love the 5 down one. Hopefully that spreads elsewhere. Hopefully that's successful. The Lte at the home one.
Mm-hmm.
Daryl.
Hi, Congressman. My name is Daryl Dietrich. I'm a computer science teacher at Warren Hills High School. I'm also involved with Advocacy for Computer Science Education. I'm on the Governor's Advisory Board for Computer Science Education, so we deal with this type of thing quite a bit.
Excellent. You're much smarter than all of us. I got it.
My students are much smarter. I don't know about me. I'm just there for that. But I'd like to make 2 points with this. The first point is about the education currently, what we're dealing with. One of the things we're finding is that some of our students can't get onto the internet in southern Warren County. It's probably not as bad as some of these other areas, but I did check with my tech advisor, and one of the families was being asked to pay $32,000 to have the lines run to their house, and another family was $8,000. So you have those issues where families can't afford those types of things to run to the houses. But the second thing I'm noticing with that is that when you have 3 or 4 members of your household on the internet at the same time, it's slow. We'll be having class meetings, and I have kids that are popping in and popping out and popping in and popping out. We're trying to make an education here that we're trying to inspire students and get them excited about learning, but that can be frustrating when you're not sure you can get the internet. So it's like, I think many of my kids do have the high-speed internet, but it's just not at the level that's going to support remote learning and remote employment, both at the same time. So the second point I'd like to make is about job opportunities. So at Warren Hills, we have a very good computer science program. My students have gone on. I have like 8 students working at Google. I have students at Amazon and at Microsoft and Boeing and Lockheed Martin. Those students graduate from Warren Hills and never come back to Warren County because the opportunities aren't here. And I believe that we have an opportunity right now with this remote with remote work to bring people to Warren County if we have the broadband internet to support that. I mean, this is a great place. As Jim Kern and I had spoken at one point, he said, Warren County's been social distancing since 1824. You know, we have this social distancing down pretty good here. And it's a great place for people to set up businesses, to do remote businesses, to have hubs to start business and so forth. We're educating students for success in other parts of this country. We want to educate students so they can have success in Warren and Sussex County. And we need the infrastructure in place to make sure that's going to happen. You know, like my students that are starting at Google are starting at $150,000 as 22-year-olds, but none of that money's in Warren County. And you know, if we can have a better broadband, one is it'll help the schooling we're going through right now, but we want to bring tech companies here. What a better place to have a tech company where you can work from home 4 days a week and go into New York City 1 day a week or go to Philadelphia 1 day a week. So, I'd like to work with people on that effort because we have great students, and unfortunately, those great students leave Warren County.
By the way, many excellent points there. I think that's spot on. I think you see us all shaking our head in vigorous agreement. Robert, and then I don't know, Jim, if you want to say something. Robert?
Yeah, Daryl, thank you for making that point. A couple of things. One is, please let your students know about Planet. We're always hiring. We can never find enough good people. So they can absolutely work for us in Newton, and they can work from home a lot of the time too. And then the other thing is I had 2 points with what you were saying. One was you're talking about the students, and the other one was I don't remember what the other one was. I'm sorry.
The cost of connectivity and losing people, and
losing. That's definitely a factor, but definitely there are opportunities in their backyard as well. Also, Thor Labs is another company that hires a lot of smart people as well. So, and they're both here in Sussex County, both actually in Newton, but there are other opportunities. We'd love to have more businesses in Warren County as well. So.
This pandemic gives us an opportunity to expand those opportunities, though, I think, with remote. You know, as Facebook is going to go in 10 years, Facebook expects half their employees to be remote. Warren County can grab those employees at this time. I think this is a perfect opportunity for it.
Yeah, Google said that no one's going back to work until next year in their offices right now. I have a number of friends who work there. So,
Kim, did you want to say something? Sorry.
I was just going to say, Congressman, you got a preview of our tourism marketing slogan there from Daryl real quick. But I just wanted to say thank you for, recognizing this issue. As you said early on, no one really realizes New Jersey has this kind of gap. And I think something, if we could work with you also, Secretary Fisher in agriculture, one of the things he's always said at the state level is we have a difficulty with the inconsistency of the rural definition in Washington. So if you can help us, kind of navigate that and maybe try to get some consistency there so that we can take advantage of more of these grants, that would be great. It just seems different departments have different definitions, and Warren County is considered rural to some areas and not other aspects. So with your leadership, we hope we could maybe work on that as well to try to get some more of those dollars back. So thank you again for doing this today. Excellent. Much appreciated.
Very, very committed to this. That's why legislatively I'm committed to this, why I'm fighting for this, and why I'm doing these, because there are just certain cost limitations that we all know of. I think Robert put it well, right? I mean, and I think Daryl, you made the point too, if you get these quotes for $30,000 for the last mile, or 10 grand for the last mile, or right, and it's very challenging. Yeah, Robert, sorry.
That was the other point. We installed drops for Service Electric during this pandemic. We've been doing it all the time. So if any of your people have things where they get a quote from the cable company saying it's $6,000 to run the cable up their driveway, call us. We'll do it for a few $100s. Even though they're not going to be our customer, it's just the right thing to do. So we're sending our crews out all the time to do that.
Adele, that's a big deal in Duffy.
That is big. That's huge.
That is huge. That is huge.
Absolutely huge. You just you hose Maryland, but that's okay.
To be clear, we cannot run it down the road for them. Okay, so if they're 8 poles away, we can't fix that. But if they have a long driveway, we'll run the coax for them. We've been doing that. We did 2 in Stillwater last week, where the cable company wanted, I think, $5,000 each, and we did it for like $600 each for them.
So Robert, I'd like to put that out to our, and then to provide us, the mayors, with a list of residents who've been given an exorbitant cost with their address and the price that they were given, and then we can then forward that to you? Is that the way we should proceed?
Well, the thing is, if it's to get the service drop from the street to their house, absolutely we can help. If it's to get the service down their street, then we can't help, because that's something that Optimum has to do.
Okay, we'll make that clear.
But could Optimum do the street to the house and stop, and then to get the cost down, and then Robert, you drop it from the street to the house?
It's typically, if they have a long driveway, then Optimum charges a lot. Well, Service Electric always. I think Optimum is a lot more reasonable. So some of those, as they finish their integration, hopefully some of that will start to get more reasonable. But I don't work there, so I can't speak for that. But I do know that we've been doing it for people because the prices they're getting are insane, and they need connectivity because they don't have it. So we're just doing that to help out.
So I'll just say our price points are lower than Service Electric. However, as I mentioned earlier, we can just have a conversation and see how we could work this out if it's feasible.
Maryland's offering a Groupon this week only. Okay. Okay. Anything else? I know we're hitting on our hour here, and this was a really productive conversation. Is anybody who wants to say something who I didn't get to?
Victor Maglio from Walpack.
Yeah. Hey, Victor.
Robert, you got my attention when you even mentioned the name of Walpack in your discussion. I'd really appreciate being able to get in touch with you individually after this and just get some better idea of what our options are. We have 25 square miles and about 12 people, so we don't fit in many places very well. Everything we have in Walpack is a special situation. So anyway,
Mayor, I'll make sure you're connected to Robert. Okay.
I do appreciate it, Josh. Thank you.
You got it. Anybody else? One who I didn't get to? Well, I just want to say thank you very much to our elected officials, to our mayors, to our council, to our excellent educators. Thank you so much for what you do. I know we've got a challenging fall ahead of us. And to providers, thank you so much for being here today, and I'll make sure everyone's connected and get the information around. I think we have to keep pushing on this and keep having this conversation until we get there. I'm not going away. Kevin, I am the dog with the bone, so I will continue on that and make sure, I knew you all are working incredibly hard to make it happen. So I'll keep doing my part. I'll let you know in Washington what we get done. But I just want to say how grateful I am to all of you, everyone on this call, for what you do and for your service. And I hope everyone stays safe and healthy. Maryland SAC, there's also something we'll follow up with on you. I think one of these programs that Tom Edwards brought up, I think might be good for your community as well. So I'll talk to everybody soon. Thanks, and have a great one. Okay, stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.